that's basically what's happening. Is just like, I see a friend. No one else can see the friend. Friend needs help. I help friend. Friend disappears into the spirit world. Everything's better.
Why have you turned into Nar? What is happening?
Hey, this is Freljord speak, all right? Like, if I've learned anything from our stories with Nar, Trundle, and Olaf, which we haven't gotten to Olaf yet, but if I know anything of the Freljord, this is just how you do it, okay?
I never expected you to code switch into Freljordian. That's just something that wasn't on my list. Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 156. I'm your host Ryan, here with the other host Edge.
Oh God, yeah, we got a fun one to jump into today.
I had to just start the episode because we had so much to talk about. Today we're talking about a new character just dropped, even though you're hearing this probably much later, just due to how we record. Aurora, which has been stirring up a storm. If you see the art, you'll understand why.
Just do it. Just go do a quick search. Jump to your search engine of choice, type LOL Aurora, and then just click on images, and everything will become clear.
Yeah, after you search that, housekeeping pops up.
That's right.
It says you can listen to us everywhere. Visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. Email us at podcastcore@gmail.com. Remember, that's podcast COR. Follow us on all the platforms because that helps us with discoverability. We appreciate you helping us fight the algorithms to get seen. But leave a like and comment wherever you listen the most. And tell a friend to hop, skip, and jump into the spirit realm by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
Yeah, and that is, as far like the jokes aside, this is one of the things that is fun about jumping into this story, because we have a character that is going to be a little bit more attuned to the spirit realm that isn't Ionian.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, this is quite the choice. I'll preface it by saying this story, I don't know, I don't have an opinion on it yet. I've read it, we've obviously done our notes, and we're talking about it now, but it feels like a part of the story, if that makes sense. And because of when this came out, this is all we have, and it's listed as her bio. And the author is Elyse Lemoine, who's done a couple of other stuff as well. But I feel like I need to read more before I establish an opinion on how I feel about this story, because it's not checking enough boxes for me, if that makes sense.
I feel like this, as far as for when we get to jump into it, and maybe it'll become clear like once like we kind of put everything out. To me, this feels like the new version of the stories that are just there, right?
Yeah.
Because like back in the day, it would, like the Heimerdinger story is probably like the one that stands out the most to me, like Heimerdinger and Gangplank.
Yeah.
Whereas like they came out, here's the bio, and the bio was like 2 paragraphs, maybe 3 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Of just like, he's a pirate and he got in a fight with misfortune, but he's okay now, and he's going to wreak havoc on Bilgewater. And that was it. And this kind of feels like the new version of that, where it's not 3 paragraphs, but it doesn't have a lot of body to it, right? Like despite the fact that there is more content there, the meat just isn't there. It's just all sides, no entree.
That's actually a good way to put it. Yeah. And we'll get into it, so you guys, because we're doing our discussion at the top, which is rare. That's my fault. So let's just hop into part 1. All good stories are told in 3 parts, so we'll start there. So Aurora is born in a secluded village called Amu, or Amu. It's probably Amu. There's 2 A's. And this is home to the Briny tribe, and she spends most of her young life playing with her friends that everyone but her thinks are imaginary because they can't see them, right? And she's a child. So this creates more of an isolated environment for her, which is a common thing in most stories like this, where you have the magical kid who's kind of weird and a loner, and they have either this spirit or familiar or thing that they latch onto for friendship because everyone around them sees them as weird and keeps their space, right?
Yeah, and uh especially on our show, like we are no strangers to like isolated character story arcs. It's something that we actually tackle a lot here. If anything, that's something that we could kind of be a little critical about with Riot, is that not everybody, has like friends, right? So it's a very repetitive story. I mean, not that long ago we covered Vex. Vex
Yeah.
very much. Vex made a friend with her own shadow.
Yeah.
All right. So it's like this is something that pops up a lot. So I think this is also one of the things that kind of like adds merit to the argument of like it feels like, it's all sides and no entree, because so far this is kind of following a formula.
Yeah. And the only person that believes her, the only adult that kind of believes what's going on, is her great aunt Havu. And as Aurora's growing up, she also gets a better understanding of what's going on with her, right? What's the thing she's been seeing? And she realizes that these are associated with the spirit realm. And it's actually a special thing that she can see as like she sees the world, she sees the spirit realm kind of overlapping on top of each other. We want to make that a point because unlike Shen ventures between both, right? When he's in the spirit realm, he's in the spirit realm. When he's in the mortal realm, he's in the mortal realm, right? He treats them like two separate spaces, where hers are composed on top of each other. And that's important. So she sees everything. She's people, she sees spirits, and that's normal for her, but she realizes that it's not normal for everyone else. And this leads her to begin studying, and not only studying, but documenting the realm with hopes that um, it helps the spirits any way she can, because she can see them, which means that she can participate in their world. And soon she starts to notice that as she's helping these spirits out around her small village, more and more spirits are coming there because they're now aware of her existence. But it's also driven by all the turmoil that we've spoken at length about in all of our episodes, the many runations and events and demigods that are happening. This is pushing spirits who need help to the village, which you can think about this as like, imagine if you live in a small town and you have some special power and everyone from major cities just started flooding your town.
Yep. And as far as like, we know two things as far as with all the stuff that we've covered on our show before, which is when the spirit world is in flux, like that usually means that the mortal realm is in flux too.
Yeah.
And one of the fluxes that's happening is this little nation known as Noxus trying to go everywhere.
Little upstart.
And yeah. So, the little guys, they're just little guys. But no, so the Noxian invasion affects everything. And we know, especially from like Shin and Irelia, like there's stories that like the Noxian invasion has a very deep effect on the spirit realm. So the fact that there's more spirits coming to Aurora means that like, there is still conflict going on in Freljord, which we've covered a lot in some of the other champion bios. So we know that for one thing. But the other thing that we know from studying with Shin is that if you were able to bring balance to one side of the world, the other side is going to be affected by it too. So Aurora doesn't have like any Kinku training because she's a Vestayan that's growing up in a Freljord wasteland.
Yeah.
She probably doesn't even know the Kiku order exists, but she is actively bringing balance to the spirit realm just by doing side quests.
Yep.
Because that's basically what's happening. Is just like, I see a friend. No one else can see the friend. Friend needs help. I help friend. Friend disappears into the spirit world. Everything's better.
Why did he turn into Nar? What is happening?
Hey, this is Freljord speak, all right? Like, if I've learned anything from our stories with Nar, Trundle, and Olaf, which we haven't gotten to Olaf yet, but if I know anything of the Freljord, this is just how you do it, okay?
I never expected you to code switch into Freljordian. That's just something that wasn't on my list. So this takes us to part 2. And this is where she's now grown up. This is the thing she does. She's a spirit realm detective, essentially. And, solving these root causes of these spirits that come seeking help, it's difficult work. And she's realizing that. And she knew to be better at what she does, she needs to travel outside of Amu instead of having all the spirits come to her so she can continue her research. So she left for the first time. She was nervous about it. And this is when she encounters her most difficult project yet. She's still in Freljord, but we know how massive Freljord is. I mean, even if you like listen to our story about, we call them the princesses, right? The Sejuani, Ash, you know that there are parts of southern Freljord which don't have as much frost, and they're considered like they treat it like it's Miami. There's still frost, but it's more kind of your standard like Michigan, right? Instead of being in a tundra.
It really is kind of like watching social media from like Iceland for for the 2 weeks out of the year where it's a temperate climate.
Exactly. So she's traveling within Freljord and she encounters this monstrous twisted elk. Now, if you've listened to our recent episode, the Sejuani story, which is very good, this immediately perked my ears up. Because we're dealing with gods, we're dealing with Freljord, and she comes across this twisted elk with blood all over its antlers. Oh no. Oh no.
No. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. These are not the kinds of signs that lead to Ragnarok. Like, it's totally fine. But no, like, my jokes aside, is that you don't run across like these kinds of like beasts out in the Freljord, and it's just like, oh, that's a strange and rare animal. No, we're talking about old gods here, and this is where like a lot of like Aurora stories really going to open up, to the credit against what we're saying of like it feels like there's not really any meat. This is as close to the meat as we're gonna get, because like this is gonna open the doors to so many different directions that her story can potentially go.
Yeah, and this guy's problem specifically is that he's essentially feral, but he's also afraid. He's lashing out around him, and it takes some time, but Aurora is able to gain its trust, and that's kind of the first step in her process. And this is one thing I like is the way it's explaining Aurora. It's showing that she is becoming an academic in a field that doesn't really exist, which is cool. So she convinced him, okay, travel with me and we'll find some assistance from spirit walkers to help us discover what's causing your behavior, because she realized despite all of her specialty, it's outside of her depth. So she starts seeking spirit walkers, which our most familiar one is Udir.
And one of the things that I do enjoy about this is that it's not just that she stumbles across a spirit and is just like, let's go to the spirit walkers. She tries everything. She tries everything that she can think of, and nothing's working. And that's what pushes her to go see the other spirit walkers. And she doesn't even go to Udir first, because for her, this is all new, right?
Yeah.
Like this is, because before this, it was like, I find the side quest, I complete the side quest.
Yep.
And it's like, I've completed the side quest like 6 times and I still have it. What's going on? Let me go to an expert. And then the expert sends you to the expert.
Time to crack open the Game Informer magazine to see your walkthrough. I just age ourselves.
I still have a couple of those Game Informers just on lock and key. Just like, it's gold.
Yeah, so once the spirit walkers are like, yeah, you're going to want the Jordan, the Michael Jordan of spirit walkers, she finds him, and he's quick to tell her that this elk is too lost for them to help alone, right? For them to commune with it naturally. So he suggests that she seeks out demigods for assistance. And the first one that comes to mind is Orn. Now, that has to be, it's interesting, right? Because now, remember, I focused on how much of a specialist she is, and then going to see Udir. For someone to recommend, you know what? You might need to check out some demigods. That's such a, for that to just be like a Clippy. You remember Clippy from Microsoft Word? You're just typing a sentence and Clippy's like, yeah, you might want some help from demigods. Like, wait, Clippy, there's other steps, please.
Like, whoa, hold on a second. like we can't just like ease ourselves into this. We're
Yeah.
jumping straight into the deep end. Like you know, the very next step after that is go directly to hell.
Yeah.
But I mean, like this is one of the parts of the story that like kind of gives me like, you know, a bit of excitement because we could see like where the story could go from here. Because
Yeah.
could you just imagine Udir's perspective here? Because if you haven't listened to our Udir episodes, go listen to them. Like we just did one with Sejuani's story that is really good.
Yeah.
But like Udir kind of has like a struggling mind, right? Like he
Yes.
struggles with the way that he communicates with the spirits, as like with the way that like the traditional spirit walkers of the Freljord works. So, like for him, it's always this constant struggle to find the balance of who he is and the spirits. And try to block out the voices. That's what his storyline is. That's basically how his life has played out. And then you're just out in the wastes, chilling, and this young girl walks up with a super powerful spirit just walking beside her, completely in control of herself. And it's just like, hi, sir. Do you know what to do with this? Could you just imagine? Like, you have been fighting for decades of your life trying to like kick this bad habit, and here comes this little snot-nosed brat.
Every day is a challenge, Rudir.
So like, oh my God, I could read a story of just his perspective of watching Aurora walk up and like, are you kidding me? Are you like, he's just stabbing his hand with a metal spike while he's doing this.
So luckily, because once again, her expertise, she knows the history of Orin. Orin's history, and as far as any of the demigods, the most information that's recorded is of Orin, right? Because of the Freljord. So, and his involvement with humans. So she knows he's with the Hearthbloods or in that area. I just need to go to where the Hearthbloods were last seen or known, and they will have connections to him. So she seeks them out. But once she arrives where the Hearth home is supposed to be, she notices, oh no, it's in rubble. There's nothing here. But her ability, remember, overlaps the spirit realm and the mortal realm. She notices something's off. She can sense something, and she tries to enter anyways, right? And she steps through into the spirit realm and appears in the great hall of Orin's Forge, and the man is there himself. Like, how the hell did you get in here? So he's intrigued. He's annoyed, but he's intrigued.
Yeah, like Orin is kind of treating Aurora kind of like a stray puppy at this point because I can't quite remember like the timeline that well, but you know, do bear in mind that like the conflict between Ornn and Volibear is millennia old because like we're talking about a conflict that reshaped the Freljord to look the way that it does in present day.
Yeah.
So that's a long time ago. And we do know from a lot of like the other like longer form stories that we've covered involving Volibear that that for the most part, the old ways are being forgotten, which means that they're going to be separated from the mortal realm a lot more. So who knows how long it's been since Ornn has seen a human that remembers who he is, or even cares about who he is. And then not just to see one who remembers and cares about who he is, but in his own house. Like, it's not even in the mortal realm, like where they're supposed to be. Just waltzes in, and once again, it's like the same. You could just imagine, like, once again, like Ornn's perspective. What? And who the hell are you? And why do you have a super powerful spirit just following you?
That's the other part. It's like a fucking Pokemon, like Pikachu on your shoulder, right?
But instead of Pikachu on your shoulder, it's like Dialga, like a literal god.
So, and the other part about that is, you know, one thing we want to mention, if you listen to our demigod episodes, is we always emphasize they're not omnipresent. right? We really don't have beings like that in Runeterra. So they can be surprised. And Ornn is surprised to see her, but he's quick to notice that she's very similar to him in temperament. She's, a quiet person who appreciates solitude and kind of keeps to herself. And this is her thing. Like, the reason she's here is very particular. And he catches on to that. And he's able to give her some information. He lets her know, kind of nonchalantly, which is Ornn style, that elk is my brother. Or what used to be my brother. So the elk's name is, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Haystrier, and it was formerly known as Haystrielk. And this was one of Ornn's siblings, but they lost their identity due to worship of the old gods dying down, which is something he's experienced, which is something that Volibear takes a little bit harder than everyone else, right? And we know they have their born names, like their old god names, like you have in many stories, but then they have their names that most mortals know them by. So now that she knows this, it's like, okay, cool. And this is good news. She has more information, but didn't really help her get closer to solving the overall problem. She just knows the problem's name.
Yeah, and this like really opens up like a lot of avenues to go, like not only for Aurora's story, but like the story of the Freljord altogether. Because like at this point, we've only been operating off of 3 siblings, right? Which has been Anivia, Ornn, and Volibear. The fact that we're kind of diving more into that Nordic lore inspiration, and since we're diving into that inspiration, there are a lot more gods than just 3. Like this opens a door to where like we could have a story that's based on Hesperelk, or like open up the avenues to have more Freljordian champions down the line.
Yeah.
So I like this inclusion because it matches the Nordic lore inspiration while also giving yourself different pathways to take as a story writer. But my excitement aside, we're still in the same boat as Aurora, which is like, okay, cool. That's an answer to a question that then provides like 5 more questions.
Very Ornn.
Yeah, very Ornn.
So this kind of leads us to wrapping up, this final part, which is Ornn tells her, well, I don't really have much more for you because he is also a very isolated person. And he's not omnipresent, so he doesn't really know much of what has happened in the time frame. So he recommends his other siblings, which is Isyern, which we know as Anivia, the Cryo Phoenix, and then Valhyr, which we know as Volibear out there. And he says, seeking them out may give you more answers on how to help Hester Elk recover back to their original self. And she leaves because that's all he can give her. And she starts to search for both of these spirits in both the spirit realm and the mortal realm, because these demigods kind of like, Anivia is a bit weird on how she does her whole death and rebirth thing and where she exists when. Volibear, because we don't have an exact time frame, I like to put this right after our Sejuani and Udyr story.
Me too.
Because of how Udyr reacts to the situation. It feels like on the cusp or on the end of that, which means that Volibear is currently in his mode of rebuilding his worshipers and gaining his strength back. So depending on who she seeks out first,
I think it's like, especially with the fact that like Aurora is having to navigate like through both worlds.
Yeah.
Like logically, it makes sense that she's gonna go after Volibear first.
Yeah,
because it's like even when
it's the easiest path to find someone,
yeah, it's definitely the easiest path because when the old gods were still in power, Anivia easily had the least amount of followers.
Yeah.
Because Anivia didn't need the followers. Anivia was just there to keep the spirit of the Freljord alive.
Yeah.
And that's it. That I don't care if they're being followed or not. I have a job to do. I'm going to work.
Yeah.
Like she just goes to her 9 to 5 and that's it. So like the fact that Aurora has to balance between the two, it's going to be a lot easier to find someone who knows something about Volibear. And that is an exciting thought, because who the hell knows how Volibear is going to react?
Yeah.
Because Volibear is definitely a bit more temperamental than Orn. So when Volibear sees one of his siblings attached to the hip of a mortal and not being themselves, he might react in a very different way of Orn, and not just be like, oh, that's my brother, we should help him, and be more like, that's my brother, who are you, I'll kill you.
Yeah, especially as someone who's clearly an innocent, right? She's not naive by any sense. It's just that she seems very earnest, right, in what she's doing and her mission. So this takes us, I mean, that's where our story ends. And that's why now you can probably see why at the top of the show, Hetch and I were kind of hesitant on how we felt about the story, because it's almost like it didn't start yet. And this takes me to, okay, well, discussion time. What would we like her to do? And because seeking out Volibear is the most interesting path, we want that to happen, as Hetch has said. And at this time frame, if our time frame is correct, or at least the time frame that we prefer, this would be a time where Neela is heading to find Volibear as well. And what if you took someone who's a maniac and also has identity issues and has a connection with a realm, and you take someone who's earnest like Aurora, who just left her home, is in seek of Volibear, and somehow she stumbles upon them in their conflict, and then somehow tags along. Because remember, Neela also has a crew of people who are like misfits with her. Neela would, or not Neela, but Aurora would be an interesting storyline to throw into a Bilgewater situation. In that melting pot of personalities for who she is and with her current Pokemon that she has. That is where I see, okay, now you have an explosion of possibilities from a writing perspective.
Yeah, and I think that that's also just like logically the most like the most predictable path to take, because it makes sense, because like how the hell are you going to track down Anivia? Like that's not really an option, or if it is an option, that's something that like we don't even know what path to take.
Yeah.
So like that would be an interesting angle to like, or a rabbit hole to go down, but instead of going down the rabbit hole, how about we just follow the path that was given?
Yeah.
And that's something that I do enjoy about Aurora's story, because we talked a lot about how, especially with us anticipating the MMO, we've talked a lot about how, in our words, Riot has good paint.
Yeah.
And for this story doesn't have like that much to it, right?
Yeah.
Like it is, it definitely feels more like a prologue than anything else.
Yeah.
And not only does it feel like a prologue, but it also just kind of feels very standard, of just like, yeah, I can see spirits. The spirits need help. I go help the spirits. We could just go down a list of like Japanese media that follows that whole path. Like, I mean, hell, like Yu Yu Hakusho, Yokai Watch. Like you just go down the list, and that's a formula that is tried and true.
The title of our episode, Spirited Away.
Spirited Away. Yeah. So it's interesting to try to, look at what directions we could go from there, but like that's the most that we could do, because otherwise the story is just there. But what makes it stand out from those other ones is the fact that like the paint of League of Legends is really good, so it has a different feel to it than those other stories. Because like you throw Volibear and Neela into the mix, what the hell is going to happen? I for one think that we should go down a more troll avenue for the first story.
Trundle?
No.
Oh, not figuratively. Not
figuratively. Not a literal troll. We need to go down a different, more troll avenue. This is a Vestian.
Yeah.
This is a Vestian who is clearly a thirst trap. This is the time to bring our boy Eduardo back. Let Santangelo out of prison so he can go study Aurora.
Not literal prison, figuratively. Listen, okay.
Not literal prison, horny prison.
Yeah.
All right.
So this leads
let
us
my
to
boy out.
Yeah, this leads us to our final point is the design of Aurora. So we talked about at the top of the episode where when I first saw her, I already knew. I was like, Riot, you know exactly what you're doing. So her being a Vestayan, they chose a bunny motif, and they made her a redhead bunny, which, anyways. One thing that stood out, I don't know if you guys remember the whole Briar feet situation, but for this one, they're like, we're going with thigh highs. Thigh highs, thigh squish, thigh tattoo. They just leaned all the way into it. Corset, all this stuff. And it's like, Riot, you don't have to try this hard to sell your character. You have good paint, okay? You can lean a bit on the lore, but it doesn't hurt. And we just want to say, we know exactly what you're doing. You're not slick.
Yeah, you're not slick. You haven't fooled anyone. And I will only give you bonus points if you let Edward back.
Yeah,
right?
if this is what leads to him coming back, then we'll take it.
If this gives us another chapter of Edward Santangelo, then yeah, I'm all on board. Let the fan art come in. I'm still going to look at the fan art anyways, but let the fan art come in. All right?
Yeah, Momocon's passed, but we think this probably will be popular because her outfit is cute. It's a cool design. Like the belt, her satchel, her hat is cool. It's definitely up there when it comes to like mage style hats. This is going to be popular.
Oh, absolutely, because it's a League of Legends twist on what we would imagine of like your traditional black mage from like old school Final Fantasy days, right?
It
like,
definitely has some Final Fantasy that European-esque stylistic style to it.
Oh yeah, like and this
the
also
Japanese Europe.
Yeah, the Japanese Europe. Yeah, but this also kind of gives like the a little sprinkling of like the dragon's crown art in it too.
Oh
just like,
yeah.
Oh y'all down bad. Y'all down real bad. All right, so it's a nice little mishmash of all of these other things. So it's going to be popular, absolutely, because outside of the obvious, visuals, she's cute. She's cute. We all like cute things. It's fine to have a cute character out there, but did you have to go this hard?
Yeah, and her lore also is that's the confident part of it, where it's like, okay, they made her a character that is an innocent, earnest person, very serious about her studies, very librarian-esque, right? There's no hinting to any other type of like, Evelyn under, what was it? Freak in the sheets, something streets. I'm not.
A lady in the streets, but a freak in the sheets.
Yeah, they're not nodding to that in the lore at all. And this leads me to say that, I'm interested to see what they do with these stories, because she is newer. She only came out with the bio. We're so used to new characters coming out with a bio and story, which has left us wanting a bit more. So we're interested to see what they do next with her. And once that comes out, we'll bring that to you as fast as we can.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is definitely going to be one of those ones to keep an eye on, because there's a lot going on in the Freljord right now, like both within the internal politics of the Freljord itself, as well as the spiritual balance with Volibear trying to retake power and bring back the old ways. So there's and all of that is to say that Neela's on the way. Like, we still haven't gotten to that conflict that we know is going to happen.
Of it.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. So I feel like Aurora is going to be kind of the catalyst for the eyes of the audience. I feel like that's going to end up being the role that she plays, because some of the other characters that you would want to use as the eyes, they have a role to play clearly. So I think that's something that Aurora is going to be poised very well for. So this is definitely a character to watch, but right now, this is all we got.
Yeah, well said. And as always, we'll leave it off there. It's been a standard length episode. Thanks for sticking around if you made it this far. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah, take care, everybody.